Guys, we finally cracked the code on why the new Sting R is so much better than the old Sting MX3. It's not the bigger battery, it's not the more powerful controller, it's not the throttle, it's not the brakes. This is the missing piece to the puzzle that Talaria figured out. Let's get into it. 85% of you guys are not subscribed. If you guys love e-bike content, if you love the Talaria Sting, please consider subscribing. It will really help out the channel and help us grow. Okay, let's figure out what Talaria changed. So here's the issue that plagues the Talaria Sting. Everybody complains about all the noise that comes from the back of the bike, especially when you are trail riding, going off little drops, just riding off-road. Now, a lot of people think that when you upgrade your sprocket, it's louder. They think when you do a non-O-ring chain, it's louder. They think that your front sprocket wobbles back and forth and makes it louder. They think that your linkage bottoms out and makes a clunk. Okay? We're here to tell you it is not those things. Now, bear with us because there's a little bit of explaining to do here for it to all make sense. So we have shimmed our front sprocket. We put a little wedge spacer in there so it literally does not move. Your chain still wiggles on the sprocket, that's normal. I put a foam wedge spacer in my linkage, and I also have the Grit Shift updated linkage that adds 3 millimeters of preload to my shock. Now I did that just so that when the shock bottoms out, there is not a clunk. It's quiet. I also have a big 58 tooth sprocket. I have a non-O-ring chain. I have my chain nice and tight so it's as quiet as I can make it. We even installed rubber things on the chainstay here to keep the chain from slapping. And then when the Sting R came out, it came with rubber pieces, so that kind of, helped solidify what we were doing was a good idea. And it did make the bike slightly quieter when you run a big old chainring. But what we finally figured out, and here's the reason why your bike is so loud, it's the motor cogging. Now let me explain what that means right here. We'll let this truck go by so you guys can hear. So watch when you roll your bike. Can you guys hear and see that actually wobble? So that is your motor notching every time you spin it. So cogging is essentially, we're not motor experts here, but we understand enough to know that different kinds of motors have different strength magnets, different size magnets that make the motor cogging feel different. And that's when the motor basically shifts back and forth when power is applied. And so you'll feel that notching. So this motor has a lot of notching, which is when we realized what the issue was, because when you roll this bike back and forth, the Sting R, it has no notching. So that's what caught us on, and we're like, well, wait, does the old Sting have notching? So check this out. Let me go slow in the same way.
It's just smooth as butter.
So to be clear, it is not perfectly smooth, and no motor can be just perfectly smooth. It does still have cogging, but the cogging is so light and smooth that you don't even notice it, especially when you roll the bike quickly. So now we're gonna play a little clip from a couple days ago when we really had to figure out if it was the motor or the gearbox, because there's more happening inside there. So I took my motor off my bike, I took the gearbox apart, and I checked it out. So we're gonna play that clip now. You guys watch, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So we had to test if it was the motor or the gearbox, and it's the motor, and we're gonna show you why. So this is a Sting MX3. We have a Sting MX3 motor, Sting MX3 gearbox. So this is that front sprocket that we were just spinning. Now, when you grab it, I can spin it. It has no play, it's totally smooth, has a little bit of tension. This is the side that plugs into the motor, so it can spin, has no play. You can see I can spin that sprocket. It's pretty crazy. I thought that there was gonna be play in all this, and I thought it was a huge tribute to all the clanking that you would feel. Not being a belt drive, having it have gears, and I thought it was the linkage and the gearbox. I did not think it was the motor at all. But watch this. Alex, let's plug this motor in.
Okay, we're gonna
just
stick
gonna
this in.
Yep,
And
basically, let's rotate a little bit. There you go. So we're all the way plugged in. Basically like normal. I cannot turn this, like, no matter how hard I try and grip it. Oh, I turned it just a little, but I had to grip it to where it was hurting my hand.
Yeah.
So you can barely turn it, but it's not smooth at all. But like I said on the R, you could actually grab this and just straight up spin it with your hand, and it's totally smooth. You guys get the point. We just had to know, because that clanking drives us nuts when we're riding down the trail. We ride a ton of single track, and it just is super frustrating. So It's the Sting R motor. Now, the Sting R motor is expensive. It's like $850. So is that worth it to you? It might be for us because we ride a ton. We appreciate you guys watching that clip. I hope it made sense to you. It really was a long process trying to figure this out. Like, there is just so many keyboard warriors online that will tell you that any number of these things that we switched will solve your problem. They really aren't. We don't think that they're worth your time. It's not worth your time to shim your sprocket, your front sprocket. It's not worth putting a foam pad on your suspension. Your chain and sprocket are not going to make that much noise even if you go with a bigger one. The only thing that might be worth doing is adding the rubber pieces to your chainstay, just like the Sting R comes with. That will make your larger sprocket a little quieter when it slaps the chainstay. But if you guys want to do all that, it's up to you. I don't think it's worth it. We've done it on multiple bikes. It's going to make your bike like 5% quieter than it already is. So that's up to you guys. Don't listen to anybody else just telling you that those things are going to solve your problem. They really aren't. As for the real fix, you need a different motor. If that sound really drives you that crazy on the trail that it's worth spending the money to upgrade to a motor, that's what you got to do. But all in all, it's not an actual issue. It's just annoying. But that is why the Sting MXR is so much better than the Sting MX3. And Talaria didn't even say anything, but they fixed a giant issue. And I think that the Suron owners aren't paying enough attention to what Talaria really is doing as a company, because they are cranking out upgrades, and I can't wait to see what comes next from them. Before we wrap up this video, we want to talk about one more thing really quick. Do you guys remember the video we did where we put my KO controller on the Sting R and we did a bunch of sprocket testing? Well, we quickly took it back off because we were going to go for a ride and I wanted to ride it on my bike and this whole big thing. But we put it back on the Sting R because we really wanted to actually tune the controller, get it set up for the 8 kilowatts, see what the limit that this battery will allow us to run, and also do some more top speed testing with the different size sprockets. So I want to quickly share what we achieved here. We were able to run 8.6 kilowatts without any battery cutoffs. We could run full throttle for as long as we needed, and that's what it would allow you to do. If you went much higher than that, you would get battery BMS shutoffs pretty quick into full throttle runs. As far as top speeds on sprockets, we were testing with the 58 tooth sprocket, and that was super nice with the KO controller. And because there's the rubber pieces here, it was actually pretty quiet. And so now we actually feel that 58 is really nice if you have a controller. We were able to achieve a top speed of about 52 miles an hour with the 58, which is significantly faster than we were able to achieve the other day. We changed a few settings, field weakening, and a few things. So it is pretty fast with the 58. With a 52 tooth sprocket, we're able to go 57 miles an hour. It's also very fast. I think the added power really does help. But here's the biggest reason why you would actually run a KO controller on this bike, and it has to do with the new motor. So me and Reed each took 2 long rides on this bike with the KO controller. We spent time tuning it. We did some throttle mapping. We did some power curves, and we got it to feel so good. It was like the most fun we've ever had on an e-bike out on the trails. Now, we were trying to figure out why it felt so different than it does on my bike, because I've put the 8 kilowatt battery in my bike, and I couldn't get it to feel like this bike does with the KO controller. So we figured out it's the motor. There's just huge difference in these two motors, the way the power comes on, the way it curves. So when we were done on this bike, we wanted to really test that. So we put the controller back on my bike. We took the 8 kilowatt battery, put it back in my bike, and we didn't change the tune. We left the exact same tune that me and Reed had just spent an hour on. We charged up the battery, we put it on this bike, and it was nowhere near the same. The throttle curve was different, the power band was different, even the top speed was a little bit different. And so that just really goes to show the huge difference that these two motors have, not just in the cogging feel, but in the actual feel when you ride the bike. Now, there is a few small issues with the KO tune on the new Talaria Sting R motor. We've let KO know these little software tweaks, and they are working on trying to fix them. I'm sure that they'll come out with a fix at some point. They're not huge issues. You can totally still ride the bike. But I think that's going to be a game changer when people update their controller on the Sting R. It is going to feel amazing. Okay guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. We really appreciate you watching. Please consider subscribing. We are doing tons of work testing all these bikes, but we really appreciate you guys watching and following the channel. We'll catch you guys next video. See ya.